Football has always produced stars, idols, heroes, and legends. But every once in a while, the sport breaks its own limits and creates something so rare, so dominant, so untouchable that comparisons stop making sense. And that is exactly what happened with Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo, two names that didn't just define an era, but consumed it, reshaped it, and elevated football to heights no generation before or after has ever reached. Because what makes Messi and Ronaldo truly untouchable is not just the trophies, the goals, or the awards, but the impossible combination of longevity, consistency, rivalry, adaptability, pressure, expectation, and global obsession that surrounded them for nearly 2 decades without ever breaking them. And to understand why no one comes close, you have to understand that football history is full of short peaks, brief moments of brilliance where players explode for 3 or 4 seasons before fading. But Messi and Ronaldo refuse to fade, season after season, year after year, across different leagues, managers, systems, teammates, and even continents. They delivered numbers that still look fictional, scoring 40, 50, even 60 goals a season as if it were normal, redefining what elite output meant while the rest of the world struggled to keep up. And while many superstars shine brightest when everything is built around them, Messi and Ronaldo carried entire clubs, entire fan bases, and entire football cultures on their shoulders, becoming symbols rather than just players. Because Messi was not supposed to succeed in a physical, fast, ruthless sport, a small boy with growth hormone deficiency who moved continents just to chase a dream. Yet he turned his perceived weakness into football's greatest weapon, gliding through defenses like they didn't exist, seeing angles no one else could see, controlling the ball as if gravity itself bent to his will. While Ronaldo was supposed to be nothing more than raw talent and athleticism, flashy stepovers and arrogance, but he transformed himself into the most complete physical specimen football has ever seen, obsessively refining his body, his movement, his finishing, his mentality, evolving from a winger into the deadliest goal machine the game has ever known. And what makes them untouchable is that they didn't just dominate in different ways, they dominated simultaneously, pushing each other to levels that would never have existed without their rivalry. Because without Ronaldo chasing Messi, Messi might never have reached those historic heights. And without Messi forcing Ronaldo to keep improving, Ronaldo might never have become the relentless competitor he was. And this rivalry wasn't marketing hype or media exaggeration. It was mathematical, measurable, relentless pressure where every goal mattered, every assist was counted, every trophy was debated, and every season felt like a referendum on greatness, forcing both men to perform not just against opponents, but against history itself. And while other players have had great seasons, Messi and Ronaldo turned greatness into a habit, winning Ballon d'Ors as if they were annual obligations, dominating Champions League nights where the best teams in the world collapsed under the weight of expectation. Because when the pressure was highest, when the lights were brightest, Messi and Ronaldo were inevitable, delivering moments that defined generations, free kicks frozen in time, solo runs replayed forever, headers that defied physics, clutch goals that silenced stadiums and shattered dreams. And the idea that no one comes close isn't disrespect to modern stars like Mbappe, Haaland, or future prodigies. It's simply context, because none of them are being asked to match 2 decades of excellence. None of them are being judged weekly against another all-time great at the same position in the same era. None of them are carrying the impossible burden of being expected to score, assist, win, and inspire every single match for 15 to 20 years straight. And yet, Messi and Ronaldo did exactly that, across Spain, England, Italy, France, and international football, adapting to new styles, new roles, and new expectations without losing relevance. Because Messi didn't just dominate under one system, he thrived under multiple managers, from Pep Guardiola's perfection to chaotic rebuilds. While Ronaldo didn't just score in one league, he conquered the Premier League, La Liga, Serie A, and the Champions League, proving that his greatness wasn't contextual, it was universal. And perhaps the most untouchable aspect of their legacy is that they didn't arrive in a quiet era. They arrived in football's most global, scrutinized, data-driven age, where every mistake is clipped, every miss is mocked, every failure is amplified. And yet, they survived, thrived, and dominated under pressure that would crush most players, becoming lightning rods for criticism while still delivering numbers that silence arguments. Because even when Messi went trophyless with Argentina for years, he carried that weight until he rewrote his story with Copa America and World Cup glory. And even when Ronaldo faced doubts about age, adaptability, or ego, he responded with goals, records, and relentless ambition, showing that greatness isn't about avoiding criticism, it's about outlasting it. And what truly separates them from everyone else is not just what they achieved, but how consistently they did it without excuses, without long disappearances, without hiding from responsibility. Because they didn't just play football, they became football, dominating headlines, shaping tactics, inspiring millions of kids, dividing fan bases, and defining conversations across cultures, languages, and continents. And when future generations look back, they won't just see stats, they'll see an era where two players stood above everyone else at the same time, refusing to let the game settle, constantly raising the bar until the impossible became expected. And that is why no one comes close, not because future players won't be talented, but because recreating Messi and Ronaldo would require recreating their rivalry, their timing, their durability, their hunger, their pressure, and their refusal to decline. And that combination may never exist again, because football moves on, tactics evolve, stars rise and fall, but the Messi and Ronaldo era was lightning trapped in time, a once-in-a-century collision of greatness that redefined what it means to be elite, leaving behind a legacy so heavy, so overwhelming, that every player who follows is measured against a standard that may never be reached. And when the debates finally end, when the numbers are locked in history and the noise fades, one truth will remain untouched just like they are. Football may produce new stars, but it will never produce another Messi and Ronaldo at the same time, at the same level, for the same length of time. And that is why they are truly untouchable, and why no one, no matter how talented, how fast, or how hyped, truly comes close.
What truly cements Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo as untouchable is not only what they did on the pitch, but what they did to the minds of defenders, coaches, teammates, opponents, and even fans. Because for nearly 20 years, football was played with a permanent assumption that one of these two men would decide the outcome, an assumption so powerful it shaped tactics before matches even began, forcing elite managers to abandon their natural philosophies just to survive, double-marking Messi to the point of tactical suffocation or building entire defensive systems solely to track Ronaldo's movement in the box. And yet even when everyone knew exactly what was coming, it still didn't stop them, because Messi would still slip through the smallest gap in a low block with a pass no one else could see, and Ronaldo would still arrive half a second earlier than anyone else to finish chances that statistically shouldn't exist. And this inevitability is something football history has almost never seen, because most great players rely on surprise, but Messi and Ronaldo thrived even when surprise was gone, when expectation replaced hope and fear replaced belief. And that psychological dominance is what separates untouchable legends from merely great players, because defenders didn't just lose games to them, they lost confidence, seasons, careers, and sometimes even their reputations. And while fans argue endlessly about stats, goals, assists, trophies, and awards, what often goes unnoticed is how both players evolved their games to stay ahead of time itself, because Messi was never just a dribbler or a goal scorer. He became a playmaker, a conductor, a deep-lying creator who controlled tempo, space, and rhythm like a chess grandmaster, adjusting his game as his body changed, slowing the game down while still deciding it, while Ronaldo refused to accept the limitations of aging, transforming his game again and again, from winger to inside forward to penalty box predator, mastering movement, timing, and aerial dominance to remain lethal even when pace declined. And this willingness to evolve is something very few superstars ever manage, because ego often traps players in their prime identity. But Messi and Ronaldo understood something deeper, that greatness isn't about staying the same, it's about adapting without losing impact. And perhaps the most overlooked reason no one comes close is durability, because talent exists everywhere, but availability is power. And for years, these two were almost always there, rarely injured, rarely absent, playing 50 to 60 games a season at the highest possible intensity, while others broke down under similar workloads. And this consistency created trust, not just among teammates, but among entire clubs and nations, because when Messi or Ronaldo was on the team sheet, belief followed, and belief belief changes everything in football, because belief turns difficult matches into manageable ones and impossible moments into opportunities, and this belief extended far beyond the pitch, because Messi and Ronaldo became cultural forces, shaping how football was consumed, debated, marketed, and even emotionally experienced, dividing households, friendships, and entire online communities into endless debates that kept the sport alive year-round, because even when leagues were predictable, even when titles were decided early, the Messi versus Ronaldo narrative kept millions watching, arguing, comparing, and caring, and this cultural impact is something stats alone cannot measure, because future stars may score more goals in a season or win more trophies with super teams, but they will never carry the same universal weight, the same sense that the entire footballing world is watching every touch, every free kick, every chance, because Messi and Ronaldo existed in a perfect storm of global media, social networks, and peak football competitiveness, and they didn't just survive that storm, they dominated it, turning pressure into fuel while others crumbled, and even at international level, where systems are less refined and opportunities fewer, both players carried nations with impossible expectations, Messi bearing decades of Argentine hope and heartbreak before finally lifting Copa America and the World Cup, completing football's most emotionally satisfying redemption arc, while Ronaldo transformed Portugal from a talented underdog into a winning mentality nation, leading by presence, ambition, and ruthless belief, showing that leadership doesn't have one shape, one voice, or one style. And what truly makes them untouchable is that their stories are complete, not perfect, but complete, filled with setbacks, criticism, reinvention, and triumph, because they didn't just peak and disappear, they stayed, they fought time, doubt, and fatigue, and when their physical dominance finally began to fade, their legacy was already untouchable, locked into football's foundation, because the game itself had adjusted to them, measured itself against them, and will now spend decades trying to fill the void they leave behind. And when people say no one comes close, it is not an insult to future generations, but a recognition of rarity, because football will always have great players, but it may never again have two once-in-a-lifetime talents colliding at the same moment, pushing each other beyond human limits, while the entire footballing world watched, judged, argued, and celebrated. And that collision is what elevated Messi and Ronaldo from legends to benchmarks, from superstars to symbols, from players to eras, ensuring that long after the goals fade into numbers and the trophies gather dust, their presence will still loom over football, reminding everyone that for a brief, extraordinary period, the impossible was normal, greatness was routine, and two men stood so far above the rest that even history itself struggled to keep up, and that is why they remain untouchable, not because football cannot move on, but because it can never go back to a time before them, and no matter how bright the future stars shine, they will always be chasing shadows cast by Messi and Ronaldo, shadows that stretch across generations and refuse to disappear.
In the end, when the noise fades, the arguments slow, and the endless debates finally run out of oxygen, the truth about Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo becomes almost impossible to deny, because what they represent goes far beyond numbers, trophies, or individual preferences. It is about an era where football reached a level of excellence so sustained and so extreme that it rewired expectations forever, an era where greatness was no longer measured in moments but in decades, where brilliance was not surprising but guaranteed. And this is why their legacy feels untouchable, because future stars will always be compared to them before they are allowed to become themselves, forced into conversations they never asked for, measured against a standard that took two generational anomalies colliding at the same time to create. And no matter how talented, fast or technically gifted the next superstar may be, they will never experience the same environment, the same rivalry, or the same burden of carrying football's global attention every single season without relief. Because Messi and Ronaldo didn't take turns dominating, they overlapped, canceling out excuses, eliminating comfort zones, and turning second place into failure. And this constant pressure forged a mental toughness that statistics can't fully capture, because greatness under expectation is harder than greatness in freedom, and both of them lived under relentless expectation for nearly 20 years without ever truly collapsing. And when football tries to crown the next face of the sport, it will realize something uncomfortable, that dominance today is often shared, rotated, managed, and protected, while Messi and Ronaldo demanded the ball, demanded responsibility, and demanded history every time they stepped onto the pitch. And perhaps the clearest sign that no one comes close is not found in their prime, but in their decline, because even as age slowed them, even as roles changed and minutes became selective, their presence still mattered, still drew attention, still altered games and narratives, proving that their influence was never purely physical, but symbolic, emotional, and psychological. And when they finally step away completely, football will not just lose two players, it will lose a reference point, a measuring stick that defined what elite truly meant, forcing the sport to recalibrate its expectations downward, even if it refuses to admit it. Because for the first time in modern history, there will be no weekly comparison to a living legend, no constant chase of impossible numbers, no rivalry forcing evolution at unnatural speed, and that absence will be felt in subtle ways, in quieter debates, in lower standards, in more forgiving narratives, because Messi and Ronaldo raised the bar so high that even failure beneath it looked extraordinary, and this is why their era will not be replicated, not because football lacks talent, but because it lacks coincidence, the coincidence of timing, personality, ambition, durability, and rivalry aligning perfectly in the same generation. And when history is written with distance and clarity, Messi and Ronaldo will not be separated into individual arguments of who was better, but united as a single phenomenon that defined the early 21st century, a dual force that turned football into a global obsession at a level rarely seen before. And this is the final conclusion, the reason the debate never truly ends, because deep down everyone understands that they were witnesses to something unrepeatable. Something that cannot simply be recreated by hype, investment, or marketing, because it required obsession, sacrifice, pressure, and an almost inhuman refusal to decline. And when future generations watch clips and read numbers, they will admire, but they will never fully understand what it felt like to live through it, to watch Messi and Ronaldo push each other beyond reason year after year, to argue endlessly while knowing the truth underneath it all, that both were untouchable in their own way, and together they were untouchable as an era. And that is why when football moves forward, it will always carry their shadow, not as a burden, but as a reminder of what the sport can become at its absolute peak, and why no matter how the game evolves, how tactics change, or how stars rise, the names Messi and Ronaldo will remain etched into football's foundation, not just as legends, but as the standard by which all greatness is judged, a standard so high that even coming close feels impossible. And that is the final truth, the quiet conclusion beneath all the noise, that football may never see their like again. And that is exactly what makes them truly untouchable.